Good afternoon, everyone. Welcoming you all to the day 3 of the Cross-Border Summit 2.0, Impact of COVID on Cross-Border E-Commerce. Today, we focus on the opportunities around Southeast Asia with respect to e-commerce. And I have a very esteemed panel, which includes representations from the leading marketplaces, digital marketing companies, and 3PL companies. But before I introduce, I would take some time out to discuss on some statistics and how really the pandemic has impacted our life. It's no secret that every aspect of our lives really has been affected in the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's still very, very active in a couple of countries. Mobility has been limited, masks have become an essential item, and work from home has become the new normal. Luckily, human beings have an extraordinary ability to adapt, even to the most challenging conditions. So when going out started to become a risk, the world really turned to digital to cope with this new normal. And online shopping has got its fair share from it. The global e-commerce was already growing rapidly even before 2020 happened, but it's estimated that the pandemic has accelerated the shift away from physical stores to online shopping by roughly 5 years. Moving on to some statistics. The Asia Pacific region itself has generated roughly 62% of the 2020 global e-commerce sales. North America was second at about 19%, followed by Western Europe at 13%, Central and Eastern Europe at roughly 2.4%, Latin America at 2%, and Middle East and Africa at about 1%. Moving on to the country-wise split. China, the e-commerce sales in 2020 was nearly $2.3 trillion, or roughly 29% of the global total. India, with an estimated sales of around $56 million, was the 8th largest market globally. Moving on to the next infographic. Here, we compare the percentage of cross-border as a percentage of the total e-commerce. And as you can see in the graph, in 2020, customers from the United States of America purchased roughly $795 billion in retail goods online. And of these, around $270 billion were cross-border purchases, which represents 34% of the total number. Consumers in China, as per the data, purchased $34 billion in retail goods from other countries in 2020. Moving further ahead, the next infographic, which is coming on your screen right now, depicts the top countries engaging in cross-border transactions. Consumers, again, in the United States of America, as you can see, purchased almost $270 billion. And 49% of this actually came in from merchants based in China, and about 12% of the total purchases came from merchants based in the United Kingdom. Worldwide, cross-border e-commerce is expected to reach US $1.5 trillion by 2022, up from about $530 billion in 2017, which literally speaking translates into a 3x growth in about 5 years. On an average, 1/3 of the digitally active population shop on sites outside their home country, and that's a very significant number. Further, cross-border e-commerce will grow from a share of 16% of total e-commerce, which is the data as per 2016, to about 22% as per Statista. That's a very big percentage increase as compared to any other traditional channel of retail. Moving on to some of the data statistics for Southeast Asia. So with about 620 million people, 11 countries, 7 major languages, Southeast Asia is definitely one of the fastest growing e-commerce markets in the world. The Southeast Asian region is also a very attractive market, not only for SMEs, but also for retailers and brands who want to enter the cross-border e-commerce in Asia. If you look at the statistics, the e-commerce market in Southeast Asia has grown from roughly about $5 billion to around $62 billion in about 5 years. Those are figures till 2020, representing a growth of 13x in the period. However, in the next 5 years, it is expected that this will grow further by 3 times, touching a figure of $172 billion. In terms of country-wise share of e-commerce market, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Thailand represent the biggest opportunities between 2020 to 2025. Indonesia alone is expected to contribute $83 billion, which is roughly about 50% of the total e-commerce sales for the region. So while the countries in Southeast Asia are still in a nascent phase of growth, in the next 5 years, these countries are expected to go in the growth phase, which is currently where countries like India, Singapore, and China are currently present in. Most of the countries in the West, like the United States of America, France, Germany, even United Kingdom, are already in the mature stages of the e-commerce growth life cycle. Moving on, in terms of online spends, and here we are taking an average e-commerce basket size in Southeast Asia by country. Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand present the biggest opportunities. So if you look at the statistics, in Singapore, the average basket size is about $62 per transaction. And these countries could also represent significant price arbitrage for very high potential sellers from across the globe. Moving to some of the popular categories which have traditionally been shopped worldwide, clothing, footwear, and accessories contribute to about 68%. We have consumer electronics, which includes computers, tablets, mobiles, and peripherals, contributing 53%. Toys and hobbies have, in fact, hobbies would also include DIY products. They contribute to around 53%, which is a major jump. And then we have jewelry, watches, beauty and personal care, collectibles, and sports and outdoor equipment. In terms of absolute numbers contributed by each category, the highest contribution has come in from electronics and physical media in Southeast Asia, which is roughly about 6.46 billion. This has been followed by fashion and beauty at about 5.75 billion. And then we've got toys, DIY, and hobbies, which is 3.66 billion. So these are the top 3 categories. Apart from this, we also have furnitures and appliances at $4.16 billion. So after presenting some of the statistics, I will now introduce our esteemed panelists for today. We have Shreya Bose, Regional Manager, Southeast Asia, representing Ninja Van. Shreya is a seasoned e-commerce professional with an experience of more than 5+ years in the logistics domain. She has enabled Ninja Van to grow the revenues in the region by managing high volume key accounts and sales acquisition of enterprise customers. Welcome, Shreya. My next panelist for today is Julian Kurt Arcano. Julian is the project manager at Lazada Philippines. Julian Kurt has also been part of the founding team at Lazada Global in the Philippines at a time when there were limited consumer options available locally in the country. Julian Kurt is currently managing projects to expand supply from Hong Kong, Korea, and Japan, and providing logistics solutions for cross-border sellers to sell in Philippines and local sellers to sell in Southeast Asia region through Lazada Philippines. Welcome, Kurt. And my final panelist for today, Simon Patterson, Chief of E-commerce Enablement of ADA Asia. In his current assignment, Simon is delivering high-value conversions and online store optimization for Southeast Asia's e-commerce giants. Prior to the merger with ADA, Simon was the CEO of Awake Asia. In his current tenure with ADA Asia, He's dedicated to bring forth the same energy and commitment to provide brands with data-driven, AI-enabled e-commerce solutions today and in the future. Welcome, Simon. And I'm your host for today, Abhishek Mitra. I lead the cross-border business vertical at Vinculum globally. I carry an experience of 20 years across various retail formats, including large format retail, franchisee stores, and e-commerce. I'm extremely passionate about building an ecosystem of brand distributors, enhancing the product integrations across e-commerce channels, and adding value-added partners as part of an extended network to help SMEs, MSMEs, and brands to expand internationally. So in today's session, we will cover a range of topics from supply chain, marketplace support for cross-border sellers, and of course, opportunities in the region. We will have a question-answer session at the end of the discussion, and I would request all the attendees and the participants to use the question and answer button to ask your questions to the respective panelists. With that, I start the first question for today, and this question is for everyone. How has the e-commerce landscape changed in Southeast countries post-pandemic, and what does the future look in terms of opportunities and growth avenues? I would first invite Shreya to speak on the subject.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you for the question, and thank you for having me on the panel. Good afternoon, everybody. So I think from purely logistics perspective, because here I'm representing NinjaVan, over the course of the last 1 or 2 years since when the pandemic started, we've seen a long-lasting change in the consumer patterns in terms of how they shop, increasingly moving from offline to online. And this has caused a change not only in the digital adoption of how consumers shop, but also in terms of how companies like NinjaVan react to this change. So what we've observed, like you said, Abhishek, in your previous slides, right from essentials to personal care to leisure items, including your hobby items, like your bulky items, are being purchased online at the moment. What we are seeing is young consumers are shopping more online, but at the same time, people from the older age groups are also moving to online shopping. So all in all, of course, it led to at least a 2 to 3x increase in our volumes across the regions and all of the countries in which we operate, which came for us at the cost of obviously innovating and changing the ways in which we adapt to this change. So speaking of which, we, at the end of the day, we're a tech-enabled company. So we made sure we were able to adapt to this change by introducing new features. Like, for example, in Singapore, we introduced the concept of what we call the authorized to leave service, which is basically a form of contactless delivery, where our drivers were able to deliver parcels to the customer by physically not handing it over to them, but rather leaving it at the doorstep. At the same time, to make sure that we are managing our customer expectations well, we were obviously providing real-time updates in terms of any sort of delays that they could expect because of restrictions imposed because of the pandemic in terms of your MCOs, lockdown, circuit breakers. And to tackle this problem, we launched what we call the Ninja Chat feature, which is basically enabling our consumers, shippers, and our clients to interact with each other to get real-time and timely updates. So all in all, yes, it definitely allowed us to sort of capitalize on the situation, but it came at the cost of changing the way in which we operate also.
Sure. I would now request Kurt to throw his thoughts on the question. Kurt?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me today. And yeah, I mean, e-commerce really was a very special time last year for e-commerce really, because we were able to see like 3 big changes in the whole of Southeast Asia. First is we now have a bigger market. Actually, the forecasted number of digital consumers that Southeast Asia was supposed to have in 2025 was actually already achieved in 2020. So that really is a big incentive for people to really go online. And then we also have we've seen higher penetration in terms of online shopping. Right now, we have over like around 40% of people who are preferring to shop online. Only in 2020, which was a huge increase from 2019, mainly because of people staying at home, lockdown at home. I think Malaysia, Philippines, we have long lockdowns happening due to the pandemic, which surged the buyers, the visitors of our apps. And then lastly, because of this experience of having to stay at home and having to buy almost everything in the online platforms, the retention, we now have stronger retention actually in buying online. I think around 80% of the new online shoppers of online platforms are really planning to stay in buying online and retain their usage of online platforms. So really, I think the way we see the future, we see that more and more brands will be having their own e-commerce arms in their companies. Before e-commerce, we usually just have no dedicated team from brands dedicated to e-commerce. Even the stocks of their warehouses are not dedicated to e-commerce. But now, with the surge of new bigger markets, the younger consumers, and shift from offline to online, we are going to see more engagement from sellers, more engagement from consumers. And we actually saw it in how the needs or the categories that are selling well in Lazada during in 2020, where we launched, we see a surge in groceries. We are also starting to sell more essential items like health products, and even the basic in fashion and all those changes in categories. So that really is the biggest change that we saw in e-commerce last year.
Perfect. Simon, for you, what has been the biggest change post the pandemic?
Yeah, not going to the office like many people on this call, I'm sure. Although I'm actually in the office now, which is why it's a bit echoey, staying away from the kids. Look, I think normalization is a word that hasn't been used a lot in the last 18 months, but e-commerce has kind of become the new normal. So where brands, as Kurt was saying, they were not thinking about it, it's now just part of the go-to-market business. I think specifically what we're looking at here and talking about cross-border, and a great number of brands have started to look to e-commerce to enter Southeast Asia that I talk with. And a lot of that is route to market, not having to build teams locally in every country, being able to test and learn before they get scale. So all of these things that were crazy ideas 18 months ago, all of a sudden general managers and CEOs are going, Avi, you want to enter Vietnam through Hong Kong? Okay, have a go, see what happens. So I think there's you see the memes on LinkedIn or anywhere, who was in charge of your digital changes in your business, and it's COVID. So all of a sudden it becomes the new normal. People are testing things, people are willing to find out what's new and what works. And I think that combined with the growth in Indonesia, in Vietnam especially, these two markets and the acceleration of digital there is really changing the way that people use it. And one example I use is actually from Vietnam. So in Vietnam, they don't have top load washing machines, right? So when I was a kid 30 years ago, in Australia, your washing machine would be a tub and you would put things in it and the machine would mix it around. In Vietnam, they never had that. In Vietnam, we did some work with Electrolux, and they literally went from washing your clothes in a bucket to a front load washing machine. And that's exactly what's happened with e-commerce. There's no laptops, there's no desktops, it's all 4G, 5G, straight to mobile phone, shopper entertainment, buying products from all over the world. and they missed a lot of that other evolution. And that's what's really happened in the Southeast Asia market. We've gone from a bucket to a front load washing machine and skipped 30 years in between. And I think that's what's really happened in the last 18 months.
Perfect, perfect. And I think the audience and myself can resonate to some of those experiences. There have been a couple of technological advances which have just come and disappeared. I can think of a pager being an instrument which just came, evolved, and then disappeared. People did not even get a trace of it. And as you say, I think a lot of transactions have moved to mobile commerce, so people are not really missing their desktops anymore. So yeah, very well said, very well said. Okay, I move to my next question. This one is for Shreya. So with supply chain getting affected for a limited period during the extended lockdown, how is Ninja Van been facilitating the entire logistics supply chain for cross-border sellers? What are some of the challenges faced by sellers when it comes to last mile delivery, and how is Ninja Van really solving it? Shreya?
Right. So I think the obvious impact of COVID was an increase in cost because there was a shortage of cargo planes and passenger planes operating intra-Southeast Asia, for that matter, everywhere in the world. So the decrease in supply, but the increase in demand because of the sales increasing was an important factor which impacted, I would say, our costs and in turn what rates we offer to the sellers for our cross-border solutions, right? So the way in which we deal with it is we don't have what we call the concept of a freight surcharge. So in that sense, as a logistics provider, we try to offer as much as customization and options to our sellers. The way in which we tackled it was basically by working with multiple cross-border vendors and not just relying on one airline. So we gave our sellers multiple options with multiple airlines to choose from. We still do that for some of our bigger clients because it allows them to have a more cost-effective and quality service. And at the end of the day, it also sort of makes them sticky with us. So the increase in cost was the first problem, which we tackled through customization. I think the second problem is basically what everyone is facing because of the local country restrictions. Of course, the time in which we could operate, or rather, there were many local restrictions. For example, in Philippines, there is still a lockdown. In Vietnam, there's still a lockdown. So our operations had to change a lot. And we had to sort of leverage on our tech to make sure that, first of all, we are able to communicate these delays to our clients to manage their expectations. And secondly, at the same time, ensure that we are able to use our routing system in a way that makes our drivers deliver at the right time and making sure that we are able to stick to the SLAs that we promise to our customers. So yeah, I think all in all, just our ability to offer customization and provide complete visibility to our clients in terms of what is happening. And I think our local teams have done a great job here because they are always in touch with the local authorities, which helps us to gain visibility in terms of what is happening on the ground. It also came with a different set of challenges. While we were trying to manage our customers' expectations, we also had to make sure our internal processes are in place, right? So ensuring proper sanitation in the warehouse, making sure our warehouse, the people who work in the warehouse are well taken care of in terms of providing them with masks, proper sanitation, hygiene. That was one of the challenges. And I think all in all, we were, like I mentioned before, we were definitely able to capitalize on the situation. But it came with a set of challenges that we are still dealing with. And I think it's a good problem to solve for everybody. So, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think very nicely put. A lot of logistic companies, Ninja Van being of particular mention in the Southeast Asian space, sellers in this part of the world have really relied upon the last mile service providers, considering the air bubbles and the limited transportation that has been there. There would have been a few delays in terms of the SLAs not being met, but I think overall, as e-commerce as a percentage grows on, I think the logistic players will evolve, so will the marketplaces, and so will the priorities for the sellers. So overall, a very nice a problem, like you said, a problem to solve. And I think brighter days ahead for logistic companies. Okay, moving on to Simon. So apart from digital marketing, Simon, does ADA Asia provide any analytics on consumer data? And would you provide some data trends post-pandemic? You obviously gave an example of the washing machine in Vietnam, which was very, very relevant. But any other examples that can give confidence to brands looking to grow their business in the SEA region?
So first, I'll just want to skip back to logistics as a consumer, as a customer. One thing about Southeast Asia is how fragmented it is. Yeah. So we're talking about it today as if it's a country. Please remember, like, I've got offices in 10 countries and 11 different offices speaking 12 to 14 different languages. The region's really complex. And even the big six where Lazada and Shopee are both present, there's still 6, 7, 8 different languages and different ways to go to market. The infrastructure that's in place from Lazada and Shopee, Ninja Van for deliveries is astounding. I purchased, to use an example, I purchased a bicycle from Germany 3 days ago. And I'm looking at my phone now and UPS are telling me it's going to be delivered yesterday or today, and that's it. I purchased a bicycle light from China on Lazada 3 days ago, and it's telling me, like, it's been packed in the warehouse, it's gone through customs, it's out to be delivered, it's got a text message, it's coming. So logistically, we're more advanced than what we actually think we are. And then some of to get into your question there, that also leads into some of the data that we don't realize that we've got is quite interesting. So using a platform like yourselves, obviously connecting sales through a brand.com, Facebook, Lazada, Shopee, Tokopedia, Tiki, you're looking at a dozen different platforms across the region with probably 3 to 5 in every country. That connectivity to bring all that data back together to one spot is really powerful. So starting just from a pure sales perspective, starting to identify on different platforms where in the country people are shopping and starting to differentiate between the different platforms. Different platforms have average basket sizes. So platform A has a basket size of about 75 and platform B has one of about 120. So how do you then differentiate either your assortment or your pricing strategy on that very operational level? And obviously for the ladies and gents on the call, from a digital marketing perspective, you know what's possible in your own country, and then overlaying that same digital marketing from a Facebook, a Google, or YouTube, targeting the audience with that sales data that's coming from your integrated sales as well. That's when it becomes really interesting. So you're not launching in Vietnam. From the sales data, you can see that your best-selling product is the equivalent of $15, 90% of it sold in Ho Chi Minh City, 70% of that is sold in District 1 and 3 through this platform. Okay, go and really target your marketing spend on Facebook or Google to that geographical area, and you'll get a much better return on investment than just opening up to Vietnam. So from a data perspective, it's not what's available, it's do you have the capacity either internally or externally to make good decisions with it. I think that's the biggest challenge in Southeast Asia, identifying 600 million people down to 10 million people that might be your potential customers in 1 or 2 countries, in 1 or 2 cities, in a couple of regions of Jakarta or Manila. It's a very, very much like India, like China, very much a city strategy for Southeast Asia. So if you think of it as a region, don't think country, Ho Chi Minh, Bangkok, KL, Singapore, Jakarta, Manila, and you're targeting those metro areas first, because you'll see the smallest share of metro would be probably Malaysia, about 70%. Tree, you can probably correct me on this as well, about 70% of sales will come in the greater KL area, similar to Bangkok. When you get into the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, you're looking at 80% plus coming from those big cities. Yeah. So some of those kinds of insights from the data is where you can start to execute. So that's it. It's what you do with it. It's not what's available. There's plenty of data available.
Absolutely, absolutely. Those are wonderful insights. And just to add to what Simon has mentioned, some of these countries are showing a phenomenal increase in social media penetration rates. So, while Simon mentions most of the capital cities which contribute to almost 80 to 90% of sales, and we are talking about most of these countries being island countries. So you have a Philippines, you have an Indonesia. The penetration rates are very high. People are buying a lot of online merchandise. A lot of marketplaces, namely, if you look at in the recent past, JD has opened up their marketplace in Indonesia. JD has also penetrated to Thailand. So obviously, a lot of global marketplaces are also considering these countries as very, very attractive markets. So those are very, very good insights, Simon, and we'll come back to you. Moving on to Kurt. Most of the audience is actually waiting quite impatiently to hear about Lazada Global. So Kurt, can you throw some light on the enrollment process? What are the benefits that are offered by Laz Global, and how can really sellers scale, and what would be some of the advantages? Kurt.
Yeah, thank you. I guess the first thing, the most basic thing to take note of is that the logistic solutions that that Laz Global currently provides can service sellers who have warehouses situated in China, Hong Kong, Korea, and Japan, and all the 6 Southeast Asian countries where Lazada is currently present. So that's the Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. So if you are a brand or a seller who is outside those mentioned countries, maybe the best way for you, I guess, to join Laz Global is probably to open a warehouse in China where our robust logistic solutions are present. You could also have if your partner supplier is also located there, we can also partner with that. In terms of benefits or advantages, for Laz Global, you only need one contract to be able to sell in all the 6 countries. So that's that's Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. We also have one tool that you can use where to upload your products, your assortment into all of the 6 stores that you have in those 6 countries. We also have a simplified rate card that already includes all the costs in terms of like shipping from country of origin to flying it to the destination country. It would also have some parts of the customs tax that each country would have. So it's a very straightforward, simplified rate card. And then we also have one payment solution through our payment partner who receives USD, US dollars, Payoneer or World First. And then if you are in need of any type of training on how to sell more, how to make better product content, we have all the information you need through our training platform called the Lazada University. So to enroll, I think it's pretty easy. Maybe you can share the link later, but you just need to sign up on the Seller Center and then manage your addresses, the address of your warehouse, the address of their mainly your warehouse, yes, and then your business documents. And then you also need to add the payment method to your account. And you just have to wait for verification through an email. Yeah, that's easy. And maybe, I guess the biggest insight I can give for these sellers selling in these countries is that to scale your operations in Lazada, I suggest that you have a dedicated team for Lazada. Ideally, if you have enough manpower, it can be at least one person per country. Why? Because each country has a very different strategy that's needed. It's a very different market. And for your team to achieve a certain level of expertise in that market, and it's important that you have a dedicated team, and especially that you would be talking to different PICs within Lazada for each of the countries. So that's a great thing to prepare for.
Perfect. Wonderful insights, Kurt. And for the audience, we will definitely share the link post the presentation in terms of how do you get to register on Lazada Global. But just to also put some insights, Southeast Asia's retail giant really, Lazada saw as many as 40 million users flock to its platform over Singles Day. This was last year, the 24-hour shopping event where brands offer promotions and steep discounts. And 400,000 sellers transacted on 11/11, and incidentally, more than half of those were sellers who were from the small and the medium enterprises. So a lot of potential for all of you. On the audience side, please reach out to us and reach out to Lazada. Keep them as one of your top priority markets when you look at entering into Southeast Asia. Kurt, as a follow-up question, what would be some of the categories doing well during and maybe post-pandemic in some of the countries? And how can sellers create visibility for their products on the Lazada marketplace?
Yeah, I think in 2020 and even after 2020, it was a very interesting year in terms of what new categories we've seen to be selling. So I guess the biggest concept to think about is that people are limited to their homes. So anything that's related to staying at home really saw a huge growth last year, and even continuing in this year. So for example, in electronics, where we saw a surge in tablets, in mobile phones because of in need of online learning, home appliances like air purifiers, vacuum cleaners for those people who feel the need to sanitize at home, even kitchen appliances for those who got into baking in this pandemic. And one more interesting thing, I guess, is for electronics are the camera accessories. A lot of people have started their vlogging, their live streaming journeys during the pandemic. And we saw a lot of a surge in ring lights, green screens, and in terms of sales. So really, that's how it affected electronics. For fashion, it's quite a struggle because for fashion, you need to have to be in style when you go out. But like when you're at home, you are just limited to the basic shirts, t-shirts, innerwear, underwear. Those are the categories that really grew last year. For fast-moving consumer goods, we saw a surge in groceries and health products like masks and even food supplements. But we are foreseeing a surge in the near future for mother and baby, because we are actually expecting a baby boom that's going to be happening soon due to the pandemic. So a lot of baby clothing, feeding essentials for the needs of the baby. And then lastly, for like other categories, with the pandemic, there were a lot of hobbyists that bought from Lazada. We saw a huge increase in toys, action figures, gardening, and even cycling and biking, because we couldn't use cars. So people used to have like bought a lot of bikes and accessories. So how in terms of visibility and in across Southeast Asia, the biggest thing that I suggest the sellers is to listen to the market, listen to what's happening to each of the countries. And even though the strategy of each country is different, make sure to upload your full product line, your full assortment, just so that you're able to target as many customers as you can. Because the more products you have in your store, the more people you target, and that's how the algorithm will kick in. You're able to connect with more people. And then specifically to Lazada, I suggest that you make sure to adopt the basic promotion tools like free shipping. Free shipping is one of the biggest tools that we are seeing people need when buying. And then you can also provide some vouchers and even this bundling mechanic that we have called the Flexi Combo. And then lastly, I guess the biggest bonus to increase the visibility of your products in Lazada is make sure to use our sponsored solution. So sponsored solution is like our paid service for you to boost your products in search, because search is a huge traffic resource within the Lazada platform. So it's kind of like bidding for keywords, where it will show up your show your products in the search catalog. And then we also have services called the sponsored affiliates, where we allow you to connect with our huge resource of bloggers, affiliates, influencers to promote your product, and it's a cost per sale. So they only get commission every time they are able to sell your product. And then lastly, we have live streaming, also an increasing trend that's happening recently. And then if you have extra resources, you can also push your own social media accounts, your own Google paid services to bring traffic in Lazada. So that's it.
Very nice. And I think my friend Salmon has been part of the change. So he mentioned he's just ordered a cycle 3 days back. So I think that's just taking cue from what you have just mentioned. A lot of home equipments, people are getting into fitness, athleisure. I might just add health supplements could be one of the other categories which a lot of people are buying, considering that immunity is of primary importance. As long as you stay fit and you stay in shape, you stay healthy, I think the work goes on. Thank you so much for those insights, Kurt. On the same lines, I now move on to Shreya. Shreya, what categories of products or parcel profiles can Ninja Van support for last mile and cross-border deliveries? Also, I have a second part to the question. Which mode of customs clearance should a brand setting up in Southeast Asia opt for while engaging in cross-border logistics?
Thank you for the question. So in terms of what we typically handle, we handle what we call e-commerce parcels up to 30 kg. So a lot of the categories that Kurt mentioned, baby products, apparel, fashion, cosmetics, slightly bulky items like bicycles, a little bit of furniture if they are packed in a flat pack box, health supplements. As long as they are within the range of 1 to 30 kg, we can definitely deliver those. Because we have vans, we have motorcycles, we have slightly bigger trucks for the bulky items. So anything within the range of 30 kg, if it's e-commerce, ranging in the category of an e-commerce parcel, is something that we specialize in. I think when it comes to cross-border, very important to take note that there are certain categories of products. For example, something with a battery is controlled / prohibited or restricted in certain countries. So we call this an import restriction. This is purely from an import perspective, but also when you do cross-border and if you use the air freight service with Ninja Van, there are restrictions that are imposed by the airline also, which require the seller to have what we call an MSDS document. Not all sellers generally have this because it usually comes from the supplier or the manufacturer. Depending on which country you manufacture in, we've noticed, at least with a lot of our Lazada and Shopee sellers, a lot of these sellers are having issues with getting this document. So my recommendation would be when it comes to electronics or items which are restricted, maybe something like a liquid cosmetics or a liquid supplement, stick to selling locally. When it comes to cross-border, the items that sell for us, at least most of our clients, what they ship is usually in the fashion apparel space. Then coming to the second part of your question in terms of what clearance method should a seller opt for, I think the correct answer for this would be a B2C method. So just to elaborate a little more in terms of what this B2C clearance method means, right? Every country has a concept of what we call a de minimis threshold. So this is basically a dollar value amount beyond which there is a tax imposed on the product. For most of the countries, this value is pretty high. So Singapore is around, Singapore is 400 Sing dollars. Malaysia is 500 ringgit, which is around 160 Sing dollars. Philippines is 10K PHP. The only country with a very low de minimis is Indonesia. It's 3 USD, sort of trying to make it a closed economy to promote local produce. So if your parcel is within this de minimis threshold, and if you're doing cross-border from country A to country B, you don't have to pay the value-added tax or the GST in that country. So if you're a new brand who's just setting up, and if your product values are within this range, the ideal method to save on the tax is the B2C method. Essentially, the only requirement from a seller here, if you're selling on Lazada, for example, would be to pre-label the parcel with the consignee's address. As long as that is done, we take care of everything, right from picking it up to doing the air freight, customs clearance, and delivering it to your end customer. What we also offer is B2B. So for example, if a seller is based in Singapore, but if they get most of their items from China, we can offer a B2B solution by air and by sea. So this is essentially for inventory procurement, right? So we don't limit ourselves just to operating within the core capabilities of our last mile services, but we also go upstream and provide services right from your procurement to moving that inventory from maybe China or India using a container, or FTL container or LCL container into wherever you're fulfilling from. So maybe Singapore. And this then becomes a B2B clearance where we pay the taxes on behalf of the customer, or we either take a deposit from the customer depending on the value of the invoice, right? And then we claim it back from the customer, of course, in a monthly invoice. So there are a wide range of services, but if you're a new seller setting up either on a marketplace or selling through your own D2C platform, the ideal way to go is using B2C clearance to enjoy the de minimis benefits.
Fantastic, Shreya. I think that was very informative, and a lot of sellers have made their own notes. Okay, so I move on to my next question, and this one is again for Simon. Simon, in the region, as you have mentioned, as diverse as Southeast Asia, content plays a very, very important part when it comes to product acceptance and scalability. So how does ADA Asia really assist sellers with keyword search, improving product listings, and implementing localized promotions? Very, very, I should say, important propositions for a seller to consider, apart from just having a product per se listed on the channel. Simon.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of following on from what Shreya was just talking about. Actually, is when you start coming into the region, like if anyone's coming on this call now planning to sell 10 items in Indonesia, then you're probably wasting your time. So I think the people that are on this call now have ambition, I'm sure, because they're spending their important time listening to our terrible opinions. But when you have ambition, you're looking at a 2 to 3 year plan. And what that means is it's not just about the first 10 items you sell. It's not, as Kurt was saying, about just listing 1,000 items because you've got 1,000 items. It's more working out, okay, what's my long-term plan for my product, building a brand, building customers? And that might start with initially testing 1,000 products across different platforms to identify what are your top 10 products, what are your top 20 that's going to generate 80, 90% of your revenue. They're the products that you're going to focus on whether it's through logistically. Maybe you move from being a cross-border seller to B2B shipping into Indonesia because it's so big that you see an opportunity, and you may then become a local brand or a local seller. And a lot of brands enter this way, where you have a 2 or 3 year plan where you list a lot of products, you find out a lot of them don't sell. That's part of the joy of listing, because it's free to list a lot. You identify those 10 or 20 key products that you think. You then start to optimize those so that they can be using things to kind of rehash what Kurt was talking about, whether that's paid search, whether that's using on-platform or off-platform affiliates, different platforms for social commerce to generate awareness. There's lots of different ways you do it, but it probably takes a few steps. Step one is identifying your hero products. The two basic scenarios to do that is either flash sales, which unfortunately is one of the true options, or it's paid search. Because effectively both of those two elements will give you customers. And even if you go and list 1,000 items on Lazada, Kurt's probably got 200 or 300 million items on his platform already. So to get visibility for that 1,000 is really tough. So the first place you start with is, if you have a great product like a spin mop and you want to promote it on flash sale, great. You can test some different content, some different prices, see the conversion rate and the uplift. The other way is you might want to just literally bid for the first two words in search. We launched a mattress brand in Indonesia. We literally went and bid on the word kasur, which means mattress. And then we played around with all different pricing and combination of that to find out what was the right return on investment, what was the right conversion rate, what were the top 10 selling products, and then we doubled down on them. And I think that's anyone on the call now, what you're looking at, the steps are list a lot of products because you don't know what's going to sell in a different country. Use your experience from other countries to do flash sales or paid search to get some traffic and find out, do these products sell? Test and learn a lot for the first 6 to 12 months. In the second 12 months, you'll have some top performers. You can get some volume. And then in the third 12 months, so year number 3, you're going to see that acceleration in growth and starting to build brand awareness. So I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, in 6 months, life's going to be fantastic, because everyone in here runs a business, and I'm sure that they know you have to go through that step process to get there. It might be faster, but you're entering 6 markets in a new region. You need to be coming in for that 3-year period, not just coming in for that short period. So that would be my advice on how to come in. 2 simple things: flash sales, keyword search to find your top sellers, but don't come for 3 months. You need to be in there for 2 or 3 years for it really to build that business and not just sell a couple of products.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Simon. Just to put that into perspective, brands that stand out today really have to become creators and producers and find new ways to approach content and engage with the audience. The way I see it is, the type of content that a seller would need to create today will depend on really who your audience is and where do they hang out. And I think Simon has given very, very good illustrations, which was substantiated by Kurt during the previous question. So thank you again, Simon. Kurt, moving on to my next question, and continuing on the same line, does Lazada Marketplace provide insights on competitive pricing, or in terms of competitive landscape, or what I call as consultative model, where sellers from any part of the world are told about the best selling price points in the category?
Okay, so for Lazada, we have this tool called the Business Advisor, where it doesn't only give you insights on pricing, but it also gives you insights on what's selling in your store today or in the past month. It's also showing you again, as you mentioned, how competitive your price is. But actually, for us, it's within the local markets of Lazada Venture. Because I think what's important is we stay competitive within the market, because we are servicing each of the markets separately anyway. Other than the pricing, we also are able to provide insights on what are the top search keywords of Lazada. As mentioned by Simon, knowing what the assortment is needed, which takes time to build, it's really worth it to know what are the people looking for. So those are the types of insights that we have. We also have insights in the business advisor that tells you where your traffic is coming from. So may it be from flash sales, as mentioned earlier, may it be from search, may it be from your own externally driven traffic. That's what we have. And we even have other than pricing, we also have if your item is converting well compared to other items within the platform, or even within yourself in the past month, and even if the items had a lot of negative reviews. So yes, in terms of pricing, we have a level of some advising in what price you need to get, but we also have a wide array of other insights that you can get from our tools.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think that was again summed up very, very nicely. And so many interesting insights that are coming in. I have one more question coming into Simon. Simon, how is social commerce evolving in Southeast Asia region? And should we be exploring this as a potential route for some of the sellers to expand their products in the region?
I would say fast is the answer to that. And I'm too old to understand. So I'll start that with a big asterisk these days. My daughter's probably better at this. Indonesia is one of 2 countries in the world where TikTok are launching stores. So like I was on a call with them last week, no, Monday, this week. And TikTok will have stores in TikTok similar to what Facebook have and Lazada has. So you'll be in TikTok, you'll be in a brand, you can click on the store and it will open up a flagship store from L'Oreal. And there you go, you can go and buy directly in TikTok, which is scary. It's similar to what you can do with Facebook over in the US now. The exact same thing, and Indonesia is one of 2 countries in the world. So they see the opportunity for that. Conversational commerce, so things like chatbots through Viber, Lineman in Thailand, WhatsApp, and people have heard of some of these and you haven't heard of others. Different chat methods throughout Southeast Asia for different countries. And you can start to have chatbots where you can either funnel the conversation through that app directly or come out to a brand.com microsite or direct into Lazada and Shopee to make a purchase. These things are all accelerating like you've never seen. I've never seen anything like it. The health and beauty category in Vietnam, over 50% of it goes through social commerce. So you hear about Lazada and Shopee on the calls today, and everyone on the call knows about them. But yeah, over 50% of the health and beauty comes directly through social commerce in Vietnam, and Thailand is very similar. And that's only accelerating. The watch out for everybody is, again, fragmentation. So it's great to have all of these options across all of these countries, but you need to use data and experience to quickly know where to fish. You can't do conversational commerce, social commerce on Facebook, TikTok stores, and Lazada and Shopee and brand.com and Tokopedia, and you end up having 10 or 12 platforms in 6 different countries, which is 60 things to manage. So whilst it's accelerating, yes, if you've got good experience with it, test and learn in a country, see what works and keep evolving. If you've never done it before, focus on what you've got experience at, whether that's brand.com or marketplace, and step through from there. So a lot of that comes down to the experience. I've sold spin mops on Facebook, doing hyper-local campaigns from the warehouse to within 10 kilometers and delivering them on a Grab motorbikes in the same, whilst you're still live streaming, which is insane. Dyson had a heap of questions on Lazada last week. which were basically, instead of asking the in-store demonstrator during their live stream within Lazada Live, they actually had questions directly saying, does it work like this? How do I buy? Do I need this accessory? So it's all very different by category as well. So I think there's a bit of experience there on KOL-led for beautician, functional for a Dyson vacuum cleaner, gimmick for something cheap like a spin mop that might be impulsive. So it's a very broad solution. It's again about targeting into the right area to get started.
Perfect. And I think we've had a very engaging discussion so far with all the panelists, but my moderator and my colleagues also mentioned to me that we need to also look at some of the audience questions. So I would request the entire audience as we head on to the question answer session to please put up questions in the question and answer chat box, and please also mention the name of the panelist. I will moderate the questions to the respective panelists. I will also request my fellow moderator Sakshi, if you can start with the question and answers. Sakshi.
Sure, Abhishek. Thank you so much. So the first question we have from, it's anonymous and it's for Shreya. Cash on delivery as a mode of payment is enabled for which all countries? As seen in some of the growing markets, cash on delivery plays a pivotal role as an offering for e-commerce transactions.
Okay, so I think in terms of Singapore and Malaysia, they are, I would say, the more mature markets. So at least like 60 to 70% of the transactions are ePay/non-COD. But when it comes to markets like Vietnam, Philippines, and Indonesia, Thailand, we see a lot of COD transactions, probably because the banking penetration is not as high as compared to what it is in Singapore and Malaysia. So for NinjaVan, we offer COD in all of the countries in which we operate. I think what sets us apart is the fact that we operate with our own fleet. So since our drivers and our fleet is completely in-house, it gives us visibility into the operations and allows us to have 100% transparent and efficient process when it comes to the COD reconciliation part. So whether you are selling on a marketplace or whether you are a small, medium seller selling directly and have an account directly with us, we can customize the remittance flow for the COD. So it can range right from 1 week to once a month, depending on whatever the seller requires, right? But my recommendation would be, if you are a cross-border seller, to not enable COD, at least for your intra-Southeast Asia transactions, because if you have COD, of course, it leads to a question of what happens if the delivery fails. And if you want to return it back to your origin, then you have to do another cross-border leg. So suppose you're going from Singapore to Philippines, it's a COD parcel and it fails for whatever reason, maybe the consignee is not available, right? NinjaVan, of course, will assist you to redeliver at an added cost, or we have a process where we store the parcel in our warehouse for X number of days, and then we have an auto disposal process. But if as a seller, you want your parcel to come back to Singapore, and if you are not located in a bonded warehouse, which is very likely when you're just starting up, right? Maybe you're just literally selling items from your house and packing it on your own. When it comes back to Singapore, that parcel will be subject to tax again. So to avoid that for cross-border transactions, most of our existing clients don't enable COD, but when it comes to local last mile deliveries, of course, we have 100% COD coverage in all of the regions in which we operate.
Thank you so much, Shreya. The next question is for Kurt. Is it challenging to sell on Lazada as a cross-border seller? Can I be in Malaysia and sell to the Philippines?
Sorry, can you repeat the last part?
So the question is it challenging to sell on Lazada as a cross-border seller? Can I be in Malaysia and sell to the Philippines?
Okay. So in terms of challenge, I guess we've already provided a lot of simplified versions of what you need to be able to sell in Lazada in the whole of Southeast Asia in the 6 countries. So we only need one contract for this to be able to sell in the 6 countries. And then you just need to upload it in one platform, and all your products will sync in all the 6 countries. And the rate card is already simplified for each of the 6 countries, so it should not be too much of a challenge. And in terms of training, we also have the platform dedicated for training. But in your example, in selling from Malaysia to the Philippines, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So recently we have opened the solution for intra-ASEAN, so within the Southeast Asian region, to sell from Malaysia to the Philippines. In your example, we have recently launched this new solution that allows these sellers within the 6 countries to actually get their own logistics partner and be able to send from Malaysia to the Philippines or even the other countries. I guess the risk there only is that it would take a much longer time than the usual promise that we have for sellers coming from with items coming from China, Hong Kong, or Korea to the destination countries in the Southeast Asia. So I guess that would be the only challenge, that if you send from within within Southeast Asia, it would take a bit longer. So I would still go back to, if you are a seller in Malaysia and you want to sell to the other 6 countries, then maybe you can set up a warehouse in either China, Hong Kong, China or Hong Kong, to avail of the robust logistics solutions that we have.
Thank you so much, Kurt. So the next question is for Simon. Does your organization offer specialized digital marketing services to sellers, irrespective of their channel of selling, thus enabling better ROI against investment in inventory?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So you start to look at any investments you're doing in marketing, whether that's call it on platform, so on Lazada, on Shopee, on Tokopedia, or off platform being Google, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, wherever you're advertising. We actually combine those all into one, and then when we're looking at the return on ad spend, we line them up with each other. So when I'm working with a brand, I look at the return on ad spend for, say, a TikTok versus a CPAS going to Lazada versus a keyword bidding on Shopee versus a masthead on YouTube, whatever that looks like. So you're able to track most of that performance. And then eventually you start to learn as well which platform converts the best. Some brands like a Nike or an Adidas have really well-established brand.com websites. They work really smoothly and people trust them. Other brands might not be as well known. Their brand.com website looks a bit, I don't want to say fraudulent, but it just doesn't look right. And then they probably move towards a Lazada in that scenario because it's branded and trusted. So there's 2 elements of that. 1, where do you advertise to get the best return? And 2, where do you send traffic to get the best conversion rate? And they're the 2 elements that you need to balance side by side when you're starting to launch. You can, if you're big and you've got a budget, you can use an agency. But if you're small, you can do the same thing. So you do some A/B testing, side-by-side testing to work out what's the right channel to get the traffic, and then what's the right platform to convert it. So yes, you can do it with a big agency like ourselves or many others, but you're also able to do the similar testing yourself to get the same output.
Thank you so much, Simon. The next question is for each and every panelist. The question is, which market in Southeast Asia is the fastest growing? I request your individual viewpoints on this, and maybe Shreya, you can start, and then Kurt and Simon can join.
I think for me, I would definitely say from a local perspective, not from a cross-border delivery perspective, it would be Indonesia and Philippines for us. Indonesia particularly because we've seen not only the presence of Lazada, but also a lot of ramp up of volumes from other marketplaces like your Tokopedia, Bukalapak, Shopee for that matter. So yes, I think for us, Singapore and Malaysia are the more saturated, mature markets because we started operating in these markets first. But when it comes to cross-border particularly, the trend that we've seen is that a lot of our brands and sellers are fulfilling from Malaysia. So because cheap labor, cheap warehousing, so better to fulfill from Malaysia. So they set up a warehouse in Malaysia, DFTZ, which is the free trade zone. And then they usually do a B2C shipping model from Malaysia to Singapore, or from Malaysia to little bit of volume going into Indonesia. Just because of the proximity of Malaysia to Singapore, you have a lot of options to choose from. You can either choose land transport or you can choose to ship via air. Malaysia to Singapore and vice versa, those two lanes for cross-border, I think are relatively cheaper compared to doing cross-border into Philippines or Vietnam. Flight frequencies are more, land transport is much easier to operate. So yes, from a cross-border perspective, Malaysia and Singapore, but otherwise locally, Philippines and Indo.
Thank you, Shreya. Kurt, maybe you can share your views on this.
Yeah, I guess if we're only talking about cross-border, the biggest market actually for cross-border in Lazada right now is the Philippines. And I think it's mainly because the country is not very a service providing country, not really a manufacturing country. Therefore, we are in need of a lot of products that are outside of our country. A lot of cheaper products, giving the consumers more options. And I guess to add more to that. The penetration of like social media in the Philippines is a lot longer, so it's very easy to connect with the consumers in the Philippines. Other than the Philippines, I think Vietnam would also have some opportunity to growth, mainly because I think they're the new, out of all the 6 countries, they are the newest in terms of cross-border Lazada. And I think out of all the countries, they are one of the least unaffected countries in terms of like how the COVID and the COVID situation. So I guess in terms of their economy in Vietnam, they're growing faster compared to like the other countries in Southeast Asia. So those are the things to watch out for.
I think maybe I can just add on when Kurt said about Philippines, right, and Vietnam. We've also seen this trend. So I think when I spoke first, I was referring purely to intra-Southeast Asia cross-border. But Philippines and Vietnam also for that matter are still very big markets when it comes to cross-border from China origin. So a lot of the China COD shippers, social commerce sellers, even the marketplaces, maybe like your Banggood.com, are shipping a lot into Philippines. So in that sense, Philippines is definitely a big market.
Yep.
Cross-border.
Simon, would you like to add something to this?
So as everybody can tell by the way I look and sound, Vietnam is actually where our business started. I look very Vietnamese. So look, I've got a bias towards Vietnam because I think, as everybody said, the 2 fastest growing and biggest potential markets are Vietnam and Indonesia. Now that's data, that's not opinion. So they're the 2 biggest markets, generally speaking, and fastest growing. The other markets that the other 2 just spoke about, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, they're a little bit easier because you can run the 3 of them all in English across 3 countries, the same content. So you've got to kind of balance up. Vietnam is going to grow really fast, but if you don't have people on the ground who are Vietnamese, it's impossible to do anything. Indonesia is very similar. You need to be doing things in Bahasa. It doesn't work. If you're coming from India or Hong Kong or China and you've got a team that's able to run something in English, then potentially you can go cross-border into Malaysia, Singapore, and Philippines and use the same pictures, the same copywriting. And I know that sounds not important, but if you're looking at entering a few countries at once, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines is an interesting group. If you're really looking to invest for the longer term and put a team against it, Vietnam and Indonesia are the biggest opportunities. So it depends a little bit on where you're at as a brand and what you're looking at.
Thank you, Simon. The next is for Kurt. How to sell on Lazada Global from India?
Yeah, so right now, in the Lazada or even the Alibaba logistics solutions that we have, we can only provide logistics solutions for sellers coming from China, Hong Kong, Korea, and even Japan, and within the 6 countries. So if you are coming from India, I suggest that you start, maybe you can open up a warehouse or even partner with someone in China who can service your, who can provide the stocks of your goods to our sortation centers in those locations. Because I mean, if you really want to sell in Lazada and in Southeast Asia, currently those are the only hubs that we have where we have a presence. So again, that's China, Korea, Hong Kong, and soon Japan, and within the 6 countries.
If I can add a question, in continuation to that was asked by the audience. Kurt, considering that Southeast Asian markets also have a lot of festivities towards the second half of the year, what would be your advice to some of the sellers from across the globe to really prepare for some of these big events which come up towards the second half of the year, not only in Lazada but across the entire Southeast Asian region?
Yeah. So I guess if we start within Lazada, we have the biggest campaigns already, which are at the second half of the year. So we have upcoming September 9 sale, we call it 9/9. We have 11/11, which was what we got from Alibaba 11/11 sale. Then we have 12/12 sale. So those are the big ones, the big campaigns to note for. But I guess something to also prepare for would be generally the Christmas season sales, because we usually see a huge surge in demand during when we start with the Burr months, so September all the way to December. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Sakshi, any other questions from the audience?
Yes. The next question is for Shreya. For e-commerce, how do you ensure as a platform fulfills an order quickly? How long does it take usually? How do we maintain low shipping fees where it's technically 2 folds? One from my country to the ship's planes, then planes to the end customer.
Okay, I think I'll take the first part of this question first. I wouldn't be in the right place to answer that because we're purely a logistics company. So when it comes to listing a product and managing the inventory, I think Kurt would be the right person to take this question. But the second part of the question, which is basically, sorry, Sakshi, can you just repeat the second part? I think I lost you.
Sure. So how do we maintain low shipping fees where it's technically 2 folds? One from my country to the shipped planes, then planes to the end customer.
Okay, got it. So I'm assuming this is a seller who is sending their inventory from India and looking to fulfill from Singapore and then using Ninja Van from Singapore to rest of Southeast Asia, right? A good way to start with, I would say, is to use a cheaper solution when you move your inventory from India to wherever in Southeast Asia. My recommendation would be to fulfill from either Malaysia or Singapore. When you move your inventory from India to either of these countries, ideally use sea freight because it's cheap. When you're moving inventory, I would assume you're not super sensitive to SLAs. because it takes maybe around 20 to 25 days, but it's much cheaper. What we can do at our end is either we fulfill ourselves where we offer you a warehousing solution, or we help you to get tied up. We introduce you to our warehousing partner here in the region. So we work with multiple warehouse partners. Once you store your inventory in that warehouse, moving your goods from point A to point B is completely our responsibility. Depending on how much volumes you have, we can make sure we work with you to offer you volume tier discounts. We can work on probably having some initial promotions for you, because we understand as a brand, when you launch, you're super sensitive to pricing. And we are more than happy to take all these factors into consideration. Again, if you want to move from Singapore to maybe Philippines, and if your customer is not super sensitive to SLAs, we can look into moving your parcels even via sea freight, if that is an option, depending on the country, right? But in general, we offer air freight solutions, and as a market standard, I think considering our competitors, we are pretty competitive when it comes to pricing. And where we stand out is, I would say, the fact that we have dedicated account managers and subject matter experts to help you to make sure that you get the correct guidance to be able to optimize your costs in all legs of the supply chain.
Thank you, Shreya. Kurt, would you like to answer the first part of it? I'll repeat the question for you. For
Yes,
e-commerce, how do you ensure as a platform fulfills an order quickly? How long does it usually take?
Okay. So in our platform, the most basic solution that we have is that, and this is assuming that your item is coming either from China, Hong Kong, or China or Hong Kong, or even in Korea, is that you only need to put to send your goods from your warehouse to our sortation center. Or there are even cases where we would pick up your items from your warehouse. So after that, once your products are in our sortation warehouse, we will deal with all the processes from our sortation center, and we fly it to the destination countries. So on average, our delivery time would range from around 4 days to as long as 11 days, but it's very different per country. But on average, that would be the usual time that we have for cross-border.
Thank you, Kurt. The next question is for Simon. How long does it take to make money after we launch a new brand? That's a good question.
If I knew that, I wouldn't have to be sitting here talking to you guys, would I? Look, like I said, so we've launched a heap of brands, both cross-border and locally for people across the last few years. I've actually worked at Lazada myself since 2000 and I don't know, 15, 16 or something. So I've been doing this for a long time. That 2 to 3 time period that I was talking about earlier, if you're really building a brand and not just selling some product, that's about mentally what you need to be looking at. If you're just going to sell, a shoe rack and you want to sell 1,000 shoe racks every month, and that's what you're doing, you can do that in 3 months. But if you want to build a mattress brand, there's some really good brands now doing frying pans, anything in the home and living categories, home fashion brands as well. You're looking at about 2 years to really turn them into a brand. And that 3rd year, like, you've got brand awareness and you're a brand. So I think if you differentiate between selling some product and building a brand, selling a product, if you choose the top selling product and you price it cheaper than everyone else, you can move volume. If you want to build a brand that people can be aware of, I've seen it done in as quickly as 12 months with some of the frying pan guys out of China. Realistically, some of the home and living fitness things in Thailand from some friends of mine. Took them about 2 to 3 years to become, I'm talking like top 10 brands in the category. So you can compete with those big brands. So that's up to the guys and girls listening. Either you're looking at selling product or building a brand. And that's a bit, a bit high level to be sharing it this time of day with everybody.
Thank you, Simon.
Actually, I think we have time for one final question as we come towards the end of this webinar. So please go ahead.
Yeah. So the question is for Kurt. What is Lazada's biggest campaign? How should sellers prepare for it? Also, as a brand from India, how can we have access to trustworthy digital distributors at Lazada Marketplace?
Or can you repeat the last part?
As a brand from India, how can we have access to trustworthy digital distributors at Lazada Marketplace?
Sorry, you were a bit choppy. Can you say that one more time?
Sure. I'll repeat the question. What is Lazada's biggest campaign? How should sellers prepare for it? Also, as a brand from India, how can we have access to trustworthy digital distributors at Lazada Marketplace?
Okay, I'll start with the biggest sale. So the biggest sale of Lazada is actually 11/11. It's a one-day sale, and we actually are branding it as the biggest one-day sale ever. So that's November 11. That's our biggest mega campaign of the year. However, we also have other campaigns, mega campaigns for the whole year. So we have right after 11/11, which is 12/12. So that's December 12th. We also have our birthday campaign, so our anniversary sale every March 27, and then our mid-year sale 6/6. So it was just 1 month ago. So that's June 6, and then 9/9, which is upcoming in a month or so, September 9. And how do sellers prepare? Expect huge sales. We are expecting on average around 20 times or more uplift versus a normal day. So expecting that huge amount of uplift, you might need to prepare for more manpower temporarily. You might need to prepare for more stocks. You will need to prepare for more stocks in your warehouse for the upcoming campaign. So you have to make sure that you are prepared in that aspect. And other than the back end or the warehousing point of view, we also have more on the, I guess, the marketing side, because every time we have a mega campaign or a big campaign like 11/11, we usually would have around 7 to 14 days of teasing period. So during this teasing period, that's when we would push add to cart, look for your favorite deals, and prepare to buy them on the actual mega campaign itself. So we always push our sellers that around this time, this is when you should start investing more on your marketing, investing more on live streaming, investing more on increasing your total number of followers. Because what's important, the sellers often forget that the teasing period is equally important as the actual day, because that's when you prepare the customers to buy. And then for the last part, did I hear that correctly? How do people from India connect with digital distributors?
Correct. So I'll repeat that for you. As a brand from India, how can we have access to trustworthy digital distributors at Lazada Marketplace?
Digital distributors, you mean like marketing agencies?
Sakshi, I will probably take that question from Kurt and try to probably make it easy for everyone. So essentially what we are talking about is, if you look at some of these markets, one, in today's e-commerce, the time to market is very, very critical. Somewhere during the early part of the discussion, Simon was mentioning about the bicycle from Germany being delivered, and he's ordered a similar kind of bike from China. It got delivered in 3 days. Today, e-commerce makes it seamlessly easy for you to ensure that a customer wants a product now, whichever website, whether it's a local or an international marketplace, the SLAs become very important. So from that perspective, you need to have local partners that you work with. It's always preferable that you have inventory kept in a local country. Today, there are various incentives which also include keeping inventory in DFTZ zones. So if you talk about the Southeast Asia region, today countries like Singapore, Malaysia, they all have digital free trade zones. These digital free trade zones are created so that inventory can be kept for a quick refillment. So that's one part. Second part is when you also look at some of the aspects of understanding the local landscape. Simon mentioned that if you're looking to trade in Vietnam or in Philippines or even in Indonesia, a large part of the population actually talks about the local language. So if English were to be your main language, that will only address a certain percentage of population. Unless you are able to customize your content in the local language, you will always find it difficult to reach the larger percentage of population. So again, those kind of competitive insights probably can be given if you engage with a local partner. The third and most important parameter is in terms of the marketplace relationships. Technically, when you talk about marketplaces like a Lazada, it's very important, and I think Kurt covered it towards the beginning of the discussion. He mentioned about the need for brands to invest in an account manager for each marketplace, because each marketplace presents a very different challenge. Having a uniform team and looking at servicing multiple marketplaces may not be the most preferred option. You need to have feet on the ground. If you cannot have feet on the ground, you need to invest in local people who can help manage the relationships with the marketplace. Not only does it build scalability for your product, but it also helps you to connect with your end customer. And I think those are some of the important parameters why a local partner, it could be a digital distributor, but it also could be a host of partners. So a brand or a seller today has a choice to work with partners like a 3PL. They can work with a digital marketing agency. They can work with a marketplace fulfillment model like a Lazada Fulfilled, or they can even work on a D2C model, which is having their own website in the country where they wish to retail and then look at servicing the products. So multiple models are possible, but having a local partner always is beneficial. Perfect. I think with that, we have come to the end of this webinar. Thank you, audience, for all your questions. For some of you who have not been able to write back to us, please email to marketing@vinculumgroup.com with your queries, and we will revert back at the earliest. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the panelists, Shreya, Kurt, and Simon, for their wonderful insights shared today. I'm sure it benefits a lot of sellers contemplating an expansion into the Southeast Asian region. I would also want to thank my co-moderator, Sakshi. And last but not the least, I would like to thank the attendees and the audience for taking out time to attend today's session. We look forward to having all of you on day 4, which is the concluding day of the CV Summit 2.0 with my colleague Sumit Karanji. We will discuss the opportunities around the Middle East region and United States of America. Till then, stay safe. Best wishes. I'm your host, Abhishek Mitra, signing off.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, everyone.